mention.
Mhm.
And I guess before I kind of cover some key points, do you have any perspective? Do you have any questions that you have about that?
Um, I've never taken a flight out of there, and the only thing I've done
Well,
is
that's actually part of the point. It's
and
all private.
the only thing I've ever done is they had like airport day or something like that, and I took my kids there. But that's the extent of my usage of the Palo Alto Airport.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to cut to the chase. So, they're looking at alternatives. Alternative one is no action, no build. And then the other four options are about expanding the airport. And I'll show that to you. Okay.
Okay.
So I think the key point, and you're familiar with this, Greg, is that the issue is that we already have too many aviation impacts. And this visual is a monitor that was installed at a house at Eleanor Party Park. And this is back in May 19th. This was done by the San Francisco airport. So it's completely, certified. The residents had 328 events. 217 are SFO, 66 are Palo Alto Airport. That's 20% of their noise is at Palo Alto Airport. If you look at the purple, it's not the quiet ones. It's all over the place. And in fact, it's even some of the loudest ones. So it's a little bit of a misnomer. Oh, it's GA. It's probably not as loud. They fly lower because they're in a different airspace. So I guess the point of this is that there's already too many aviation impacts. And as you know, in our conversations, that you have the ability to control the footprint of Palo Alto Airport. That's not true for San Francisco or San Jose. So you can control if this 66 gets higher, et cetera, right? So that's a big difference, right? You can't just say, oh, we can't do anything about it.
So do they fly? I mean, because I'm looking at the picture, I mean the map here. The
Yeah.
airport runway is perpendicular to Palo Alto, right? So they shouldn't, right? So the airport's here, then the Palo Alto's over here. So they shouldn't be flying over Palo Alto. Do they actually fly over Palo Alto?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's a whole different slide. But
Okay.
yes, there are 3 procedures, Greg, that fly over Palo Alto. Surfer, pirate, and bodega. That's the issue. All 3
Okay.
of them. The problem is with next gen, they took all the flights and they narrowed them into less pathways, and they all converge over Palo Alto. Three of the major flights. So that's 60% of the arrivals. Okay, so message here really is that 20% already of the noise that's being experienced is from Palo Alto Airport, and Palo Alto has the ability to change that. So what this slide shows is that there's 5 alternatives being proposed, and they want to increase the runway, increase the width of the runway, the length of the runway, the separation between the runway and the taxiway, and add a second taxiway. And then there's also this comment that they're going to shift the runway further from the airport. One of them moves it closer, but 3 of them allegedly move it further.
How do they do that? Because the bay is right there.
Well, they're not going to move it a lot, like 100 feet or so.
Oh, I see.
That I'm not covering all the eco problems, but yes, I'm going to cover the people problems. But I completely support the exact question that you're asking. It has implications on the duck pond, the pathway, the marshland, etc. But for purposes of our conversation, what I want to make sure is really clear is that this looks really small. 5 feet width, no big deal. 100 feet runway separation, shift the runway, add another taxiway, and maybe 157 up to 1,000 feet for the runway.
There's only one taxiway right now?
Yes. So the problem is that a seemingly small expansion, right, really results in more planes and bigger planes, and I'll explain that. And once we do this, we don't get to control a curfew, a noise ordinance, or the number of operations. That is now out of our control. So here, I think you'll appreciate this.
Oh, wait, can you go back to the eVTOL? So what's happening there?
Well, they want to build an eVTOL landing place. And the problem with that is once you build that eVTOL landing place, you have to let anything land at the eVTOL landing place. And so until we know how many events, the noise level, the safety, the privacy, the visual pollution, we should not put that infrastructure there because you can't take it back. You can't say, oh my gosh, we had no idea there's going to be 1,000. And as a businessman, you know, advanced air mobility is based on volume. It's not going to be based on, pilot driven aircraft. So,
Do we not have any control over the flight path at all?
well, not once you put that all there. Once you put up there, obviously they're going to figure out how to, it goes up, eVTOLs, vertical takeoff and landing. So no, I mean, there's just going to be it's kind of the undeveloped area eVTOL. I mean, I've attended a lot of AAM seminars. They're still profiling noise and, all that type of stuff. I mean, simple stuff like visual pollution and privacy, that's a big issue.
I thought they were a lot quieter now, no?
Well, I've seen early Joby data, and they're still 45 to 65, which is still in the maybe the lower half of that range, but they're still in that range. And the other issue is there isn't a lot of data, like how loud and how far is the diameter of that loudness, and how low are they flying, how long, and are they going to hover, and so on. So I think that the due diligence of what the business model is and how this is going to affect that vertiport needs to be figured out before we build it. So I'm glad you caught that, because that is the key point, that they're actually looking at doing a vertiport too.
Okay.
Okay, so going back a little bit.
Is that what they call it? Call it a vertiport? That's actually the term?
Yeah, but like vertical, so you're vertically going up,
interesting.
yeah. So the runway at Palo Alto right now is 70 feet, and that is in a category called Group 1, which means any wingspan that is less than 49 feet. So the Cessnas, you can see, like a 4-seat Cessna fits that. There's a plane that comes into Palo Alto called the Pilatus PC-12. They kind of are over that, okay? You see that? They really should be in a Group 2 runway. And that's why all the recommendations that I showed you on this previous page is to accommodate the Pilatus. And the problem is once you move.
But you're saying that it flies in already?
Yeah. So if you raise these requirements to be Group 2, you now get Group 2 aircraft. And Group 2 aircraft is bigger than a Pilatus. Do you see what I mean? So I just put an example here. Twice as big can fit in there, a 20-seater. Now, I didn't have time to do all the research, but the point is now you're letting in Group 2 aircraft into the airport. You're not letting more Pilatus. You are letting in more Pilatus, but you are also letting in anyone that can qualify for Group 2. And that's how this seemingly little change to accommodate becomes a category of allowing things in.
Now, are the bigger planes like necessarily noisier, or are they like not as noisy? I mean, because I don't know how the noise scales with plane size.
Yeah, they're noisier, and you're gonna have you might even have more because of the passengers, right? You get to take 20 people in it, so you got a lot more people on it coming.
But it is noisier, like the Havilland versus the Pilatus.
I can try to get, today I actually populated the photos so you could see after we did research about the wingspan, but it's hard to find noise data. I can try to find noise data, but I can tell you a Cessna is not going to be as loud as this big, Havilland. So I'll have to get the DB, but the point is you're letting in bigger and more. So you're dealing also with the quantity, because now it's more attractive for people to come in.
Just out of curiosity, why, we've been talking about this like flight path thing for even before I was on council. So why has, and Palo Alto is probably the #1 donor to the Democratic Party. So why have, after all these years, we've had no effect over the flight path?
Okay, well, I think that there's two different topics. One is controlling San Francisco Airport and San Jose Airport.
Yeah.
But this is The difference is you have control over
Yeah.
Palo Alto
No,
Airport.
I'm just talking about flight path in general, right? Like, you would think that we would have
It's
some
it's
sway
a
over.
it's a it's a national, it's the FAA deciding that. And then the other issue, Greg, is that we were not on the San Francisco Roundtable because it was created 40 years ago when we weren't a city that was located and experiencing airplane noise problems. It was a problem at the airport. So they created a charter that only let cities that were affected.
Hmm.
And now that next gen happened that were affected, we were not allowed in. And Anna Eshu did try to get us in.
Uh-huh.
So we weren't allowed in. And they saw our early presentation of next gen,
Mhm.
and we didn't get the same preview, review, comment that they all did. Now, yes, so there's all kinds of issues with
But
that.
isn't the FAA like executive branch, so it should be controlled by the president, right? So Biden, I mean, he's done a ton of fundraisers here in Palo Alto. You would think that we would be able to have some sway
The
over.
aviation industry is the 10th largest lobby. And if you look up how many billions of dollars they got during COVID, it'll give you an idea of the
Hmm.
airports and the airlines muscle. Let me finish this.
Okay,
Just
sure,
we probably will have a few minutes left, but let me
sure.
just finish what's going to be on the agenda tomorrow. So the other thing is that there is a very significant environmental justice issue. This shows the location of Black and non-white Hispanic that are located 0.31 miles and 0.62 miles from the airport. And as you can see, they're overly represented compared to the county population.
Hmm. Because
And
it's like I think at the end of the runway is East Palo Alto, right?
yes, and also the other area that's affected is Menlo Park. What's that area called? I forgot what it's called. The Menlo Park area by Facebook, but to the left of Facebook,
Yeah.
that area, where Willow all the way to the DeBarton Bridge area. Yeah, so that area of Menlo Park is affected quite a bit also.
Hmm.
And then the other thing that I don't know if you know, but the Palo Alto Airport is ranked number 19 of the top 100 lead polluting airports.
That's not good.
No, and Reed Hillview is 36, so we are much higher up. And as you know, that they're looking at closing Reed Hillview after their lead study.
Hmm.
So for all these reasons, this is why the action should be to go with alternative one. And this whole thing about shifting, we're going to shift the runway further from the neighbors. There's
Hmm.
nothing in the packet that says how far you're shifting it and what the reduction in noise is. Because as you know, if you shift it and it's 5 decibels less and you're already at 80 and now you're going to 80, 75, so what, right?
Yeah.
And also if you go down 1 decibel, you need 3 decibels to notice it. So it's good positioning to say we're moving the airport further from our neighbors, but as you know, unless you move it a quarter of a mile, you're not going to have much impact.
Hmm.
And is not moving a quarter mile. There's not enough room over there.
To me, it seems like we should like really control the flight path because that's one of the big things, right?
The
Like we should
problem
we
is
should
they got to take off and land at the runway.
no, but they could go over the bay, right? I mean, the runway is perpendicular, so they should be able to go over the
Not
bay.
for Palo Alto, not for Palo
Why
Alto,
not though?
San
Because I
Francisco.
mean, because
They got
because
to come in though and land into the airport.
I know, but if you look where the runway is, it's like they're just going over the trash dump and then going down, flying into
Yeah,
the
I, I
airport,
think
right?
I think you could have the airport answer, but I'm sure if they could do it, they would do it. It's not like the San Francisco airport where they have a conflict. I'm sure they'll probably tell you there's the airspace and blah blah
Hmm.
blah.
Hmm. Okay.
We have to fly underneath the Class B airspace, so I mean, I'm sure that that's a constraint,
Hmm.
which is the commercial, the
Yeah.
commercial.
We should force everyone to fly over the bay instead. Because it's like the runway is like one side is all the housing and then other side's the bay. They should make everyone fly over the bay, right? I would think, right?
I don't. I'm sure that there's constraints why they can't do that. I mean, feel free to ask the
And also,
question.
like, if the airplane fell out of the sky, if it was overpopulated areas, it's a bigger issue versus the water, not many people are gonna get killed for sure, right?
Well, it's funny that you say that, Greg, because the reason why they're allegedly making these recommendations is that the FAA has identified deficiencies, but the deficiencies are based on group 2, not on group 1.
Mm,
And so if you want more safety, you want less airplanes,
mm.
you know,
But
to
by the
your
way,
point.
how much money does the city make off the airport?
I don't have the financials, but there is still a loan out. They
Mm,
don't just, we've been trying to look at the annual report to get all the data, but I don't, I'm not an expert at it.
okay, no problem, no problem.
Yeah.
Just curious.
But I don't think that the full cost or the brunt of the full human nature led costs are being borne by the landing fee of somebody.
Mm,
Someone sent me a picture of someone that like went around Palo Alto like as a enjoyment ride like 5 times, you know, doing some type of tour, and great, you know. I mean, I understand the importance of the Stanford Medical and the firefighting, but that's not what we're talking about.
mm,
And the rules are cleverly set. You can't say, oh, you can only come into the airport if you're doing a firefighting or a, transferring an
mm,
organ. That's not the way it works. You're either open or not open.
mm,
So I think the key points for me is, ask all your questions, but alternative 1, otherwise we're going to have more planes and bigger planes and
mm.
less safety. I mean, they're all flying over people. And this eVTOL thing, do not build that vertiport until you understand what our jurisdiction, the freedoms we're going to give away, what land use authority we have,
Yeah.
and what is the profile of what could happen.
So now, how's this different from like a helicopter like landing site?
I understand that they can go more vertically up. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to go
Really?
as far.
No, no, I mean I know that versus the airplane, but like a helicopter goes vertical too, right? So what's the
Well, I
difference
think
between
this one goes even more straight
than
up.
a helicopter? Really?
Yes, I
Mm,
believe so. I don't think they're as noisy as a helicopter, but they're still noisy. They're not,
mm.
I mean, helicopters are excruciatingly noisy.
Yes.
These are still noisy. I mean, at the landing, it's still 65. And if you look here, if our ambient noise is 35, 65 is still pretty loud
Mm,
for a takeoff. This is takeoff, you know what I
mm,
mean? And the question is, how long does it make that noise? And how far, and then how low are they going to fly? And then there's the issue of how many are there? There's going to be a lot, Greg,
mm,
because there's manned and unmanned,
mm. Actually, that's actually an interesting idea, because you would think that actually what you could do instead of flying the helicopters, you could put the organs in a drone, right?
All right,
And fly it.
Darlene, I'm gonna cut you off
Okay,
because we have another appointment now
no
at
problem. Any
8:30.
any other questions, Greg?
Oh, that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bye.